Sounds like. Hello, I think we're live.
I believe so.
We're just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Can we see how many people are here?
Yeah, guys, if you just stick something in the chat, just say hi or something, just to confirm you can hear us, and so we know there's people there. Because currently we can't see how many people.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Loads of you. Loads of thumbs up too. Nice.
Cool. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to join, and then we'll introduce ourselves and we'll go from there. Get ready for my RPC branded cup. How's everyone doing? Everyone enjoying the weather? Grim where we are.
Not really from Josh.
No. Sensible.
Agreed.
Cool. So we'll just we'll probably give it until like 3 minutes past, and then we'll say some things.
We'll get started. Yeah. Oh, Mars has disappeared.
It's useful. His connection's dropped out, I assume.
Hi, sorry, I'm back. Wi-Fi issues.
No problem. Thought we'd lost you.
You'd be so lucky.
Okay. Well, I think we should get started.
Go for it.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the RPC trainee perspective. My name is Nick. Sitting next to me is Jack, and live from Bristol is Mars, and we're going to be taking you through kind of an introduction to each of us and what we've been doing at RPC, and then it is open to you to ask us whatever questions you want, really. And then towards the end of the session, Estelle Nelson from the early talent team is going to join us, and she will be able to give you some details about important dates that are coming up, applications, and answer any of the nitty-gritty application questions that we haven't been able to help you with. Feel free to put questions in the chat. I think that's the only way you can actually talk to us. So we'll keep an eye on that and try and make sure we answer everyone's questions in order. Also, feel free to just say hi and chat to each other as well. Okay, so I will get started and give you a bit of background to me. So my name is Nick. I'm a first seat trainee in the professional and financial risks team. That means I've been a trainee since about September. So everything is still very new to me. The team that I am in sits in the insurance side of RPC, and professional and financial risks means that we support clients who may be solicitors, accountants, or other professionals who need assistance in regards to the work that they've done before. Really enjoying my time at RPC. I'm based in the London office with Jack and with 14 other trainees. And then there's 4 other trainees who are based in the Bristol office. Mars will tell you all about that. That's a kind of snapshot from me, but I'm sure I'll go into more detail later. Who wants to go next?
Go on, why not? So yeah, as Nick said, my name's Jack. I'm a third seat trainee, so my second year, and that means that I allegedly am more experienced and knowledgeable, but we'll see over the course of the hour how true that is. I suppose a bit about my background before I came here. So it's actually quite boring, to be honest. So I did government and history at LSE. I then did the summer scheme here in the summer of 2019, and then did the GDL LPC and started here last September. So yeah, if you want somebody to give you some sort of long winding story about how they ended up with a TC at RPC, I'm really not that person. But yeah, and then since then, so I started in, my first seat was in professional financial risks, which is where the best ones always start. So yeah, as Nick said, during that time, it was working on defending professionals against negligence claims. Professionals could be accountants, solicitors. There was an insurance broker's case as well when I was there. And it's sort of good litigation defense work. And yeah, as Nick said, it's on the insurance side. My second seat was then restructuring and insolvency, which is a bit of a gear change, which sits on the commercial side. So it's a mixture of contentious and non-contentious. So you could be on the non-contentious side, it could be working on the pre-pack administration of a company. So a company goes under and is then sold immediately afterwards. On the contentious side, it could be suing former directors of an insolvent company for breach of duties, and you make that claim on the company's behalf so you can make a return to creditors. So that was really good. That was really varied. And I'm now in intellectual property and tech, which is another commercial seat. And that is, as the name suggests, it is a mixture of IP and tech. Predominantly at the moment, it's tech disputes. So we've got some really, really big tech dispute matters on at the moment. I'm on one of those, which is on sort of witness statement stage at the moment, which is causing all manner of fun and games. But there are some smaller IP, so things like copyright, trademark disputes, kind of satellite matters on the side, which I've had some involvement with. So yeah, that's me so far. I dare say we'll get a bit more into it later on.
And yeah, I guess it's my turn then. So I'm also a first seat trainee. I'm also in the professional financial risks team, but I'm in Bristol. So as we said before, professional financial risks, you're working to defend solicitors, professionals, pension funds, accountants, financial advisors. That's the type of work that you do when there are claims against them. Yeah, so I've been here 2 months, I think. Yeah, just over 2 months. And just a bit about my background, I did law at undergrad, and then I did the LPC, and I paralegaled for 1 year, and then I started here. So not much in terms of, general work experience, I think. I mean, I worked for 1 year, and then I came here. So yeah, there isn't really, I'm pretty green, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So pretty much our intention here is just to open up questions to the floor for this. We don't really have anything pre-prepared, although I can probably ramble on for a couple of minutes if needed. But our intention really is for you to ask us any questions that you've got, and we will do our best to answer or direct you to somewhere where the answer is.
Yeah. So I can see a few people are typing. If you have any questions, to start putting them into the chat box, and then we will start answering them. And that can be questions about absolutely anything, whether it's working at RPC, the application process.
Indirect, kind of, yes, it is. So this question from Julie here is resecure, a seat that trainees can choose. Resecure is to do with data breaches. It's not a seat that I've done, but it fits within the cyber team. So yeah, that's a seat that London trainees can do. And it's quite a popular one at the moment in my intake. So Yeah, it's a good one. Who wants to answer that? Who wants to? One from Daniela. What is your favourite thing about working at RPC as a trainee? And this will look really bad if you have to hesitate. So, Nick?
I can have a go. I mean, like Mars, I'm 2 months in. I think my favourite thing so far has just been how welcoming everyone at the organisation has been, both in terms of we have a really nice sized trainee cohort of 18 of us. We're all quite close, even across London and Bristol. And then that translates also into the team and the work that I'm doing. So I have a good relationship with the 2 supervisors that I have, and that translates well into the work that I'm getting. The partners and the associates in the team who don't directly supervise me also are really nice and supportive too. So I think that's been my favourite thing so far.
Yeah, so that's the same in Bristol as well. Everyone's just really welcoming, supportive. Even if you haven't really got much experience in the seat that you're doing, people are still, open to answering questions, and you just never feel like you can't. And just the general firm culture as well. Everyone's very welcoming. It's not just limited to lawyers. You also get, business support staff, paralegals, other, people, non-qualified people. It's not just the lawyers in your team. It's just anyone you can feel comfortable speaking to. And I think it's just a firm-wide cultural thing.
Yeah. And obviously, particularly the trainee intake above have been very welcoming and done a great job as well. So yeah, no, correct. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose for me, it feeds into that, because you obviously mentioned the size of the intake. You can actually get some quite good levels of responsibility quite early on, which I think is good. I think it's symptomatic of the trainee intake size. I think it's the fact that although we do big matters, a lot of them aren't the absolute multi-billion-dollar things that Magic Circle firms are doing. So the matter teams tend to be of a size where the trainee can have some degree of input, which is perhaps more than you get elsewhere. So I think that's a real positive, and it makes it rewarding, but it does also help you develop a lot as well. So yeah.
Yeah, there's never an army of associates or trainees on a matter. So you just get the chance to shine and do what you can.
So we've got one here from Sharon. Should applicants apply for VAC schemes for training contracts? Can you do both at the same time? I'm going to preface this by saying we're going to have Estelle on later, who's from our early talent team, who is the authority on this. Our knowledge is probably a little bit flaky on this in places. But you can, applying for a VAC scheme before a training contract is the kind of more popular way to do it. That's how most people get a TC ultimately, or at least that was when I applied. I don't believe you can apply for both at the same time. I'm not going to say that absolutely for certain, but I'd be quite surprised if you could. So
that's my understanding too. Yeah. And I would say both routes are equally valid, and people come through both routes every year. However, I would say the vast majority come through the VAC scheme route. Simply which is the same across a lot of city firms, that RPC gets to spend more time with people who've done a 2-week VAC scheme, so they feel they can make a more informed decision, and it also gives you more of a chance to show off and impress, rather than a direct training contract application, which doesn't have that 2-week work experience period. It's just the kind of standard interview process.
What do we have? What would you say is the most exciting legal development in RPC right now? That's a good one, actually. I don't know, to be quite honest. I say legal development, I'm going to give you a proper lawyer's answer here. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by legal development.
I feel like it's a good question, and it probably is one that if you spoke to partners from different departments across the organisation, they would argue about, saying that the thing they think is the most important one, simply because there are so many different teams working on different legal issues that are changing all of the time. Even just within the insurance seats, there will be very there'll be different legal developments within, say, the professional financial risk side compared to our construction team, compared to our general medical liability teams. And so those things are happening all the time. I would say, don't know if it's the most exciting, but probably one of the things I've seen that's most active across everywhere is the use of maybe legal tech across different matters, and the way courts are now expecting more things to be electronic rather than paper-based, and that actually kind of working itself out in terms of the practical work that lawyers and solicitors and us as trainees have to do.
Next one. How do you apply for summer back scheme? Is it only open to those who finish 1 year of law school only? I'm not sure.
I think it's
It's
open to
me that, but
Yeah.
feel free.
So the application details should be all on the website, and there's usually an application form that you complete and submit. And that's all done digitally. You shouldn't need to kind of do anything paper-based and send that in. In terms of applications and what you need to finish, I believe the requirements are on the website, and it's, say, having a 2-1 undergraduate or expected 2-1 undergraduate degree. But we do have people who apply during their second and third years. There isn't a cutoff in terms of when you've graduated or the type of kind of undergraduate degree or equivalent you have. If it's something international based, you may just want to check with our early talent team how to put that in the form. I definitely applied many years after I graduated and didn't have any problem with that. So it's quite flexible. I wouldn't let any assumptions you have about your degree or kind of the status of it put you off. It's better to ask the questions and find out than not apply at all.
Yeah, I think the general rule is you want to be 2 years away from starting. So you want to be able to start in 2 years. So yeah, if you're doing a law degree, then I don't know how it works with the SQE now, but when I was applying, if you did a law degree, you'd apply in your second year. So that would give you, I mean, the earliest you would be able to apply was your second year. So you'd have 1 year to finish your degree and then the other for the LPC. I think that
is the way it's still going.
Yeah,
because they've opened up for 2025.
Yeah.
Now, so that, because once that concludes, that'll be next year. So yeah. What do you enjoy about your traineeships on the day to day? Well, again, this will look bad if you hesitate. So,
I think it's, the best thing is that it's different from a traditional job in the sense that anyone in the team can give you work. So you're not sort of tied to one person who you work with all the time. So you just get to sort of meet and just speak to and just do work for basically anyone in the team. And I've lost count now, but it's definitely not just your supervisor. So I'd say that that's just one thing I enjoy. I know I have friends who aren't lawyers, and they work with the same people every day, and they say it does get boring. But and as a trainee, just being able to work with multiple people doing many things at the same time is something I enjoy.
Yeah, I'd say I think it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, but it goes to the level of involvement, because you will actually get a sense with quite a lot of things that you do that you've done something that will actually feed into the progress of the matter overall, and not. It gets difficult when you're in your first couple of weeks, but once you've been at it for a couple of months or so, you can genuinely get on with work where that will be used by people who are senior to you, and that's it's quite rewarding to know that that's the level of trust and kind of the level that you're operating on, I suppose. So yeah, that would be, but it's within an environment that doesn't feel particularly intimidating. That somebody's going to come in, throw something at you if you get it wrong, because everyone does still acknowledge that you're a trainee. So it's quite a nice, balanced environment, I suppose. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think I just add to the final part of that is that all of the things Miles and Jack have just said means you get to do different things every day. And that's what I quite like at the moment, especially as someone quite new. Each day is very different. Even tasks which on paper might seem like they could be repetitive, like being asked to do pieces of legal research or things like that. Every one of those I've had has been completely different and looking at completely different things. So that's been really nice to have that. And then you do something and then someone actually appreciates it and you can see it being used. So that's really nice. That's a really nice thing about being a trainee in general, and the way it's done at RPC is yeah, good. What we've got next? What made you choose RPC?
I would say I wanted. It was quite difficult for me because I hadn't done law, so I didn't have a huge understanding when I applied of what the different areas meant. But I had a sense that I was probably going to tend more towards disputes. RPC's got a reputation for that. I wanted a firm with a relatively small trainee intake because I didn't necessarily like the idea of being lost in a sea of trainees and it feeling sort of like an impersonal organisation. So I felt RPC was quite a nice size. Obviously, it's what everyone talks about and it's what it markets itself on quite heavily as well, but it was reputed to have a nice culture and indeed does. So there was an element of wanting to train somewhere that wasn't sort of going to be such a cutthroat environment that it would be an intimidating place at which to train. And bluntly, I didn't like the sound of being worked every hour that God sends, both evenings, weekends, leave, whatever, at some perhaps slightly larger firms who may or may not be headquartered in the US, not very far from this office. So, yeah, I would say that was the kind of combination of things that led me to apply to RPC and firms that were roughly similar. So, yeah. That's a good question because something like that often comes up in the application forms. That's like quite a good, efficient, getting us to do some of the work for you. Great work there, like that.
Having a rapid response to that. I think the reason why I chose RPC is similar. I'm a career changer, so having somewhere where I could get a high level of responsibility quite quickly, like Jack has mentioned, was good, but also having the small trainee intake where I could get to know people, get to know trainees from previous years quite soon, rather than being just one of 100 trainees starting in the field. And I think the combination of that, but also what Jack has touched upon in terms of the high quality work that we get involved with, quite a lot of the matters, especially the disputes that RPC is instructed on, we will be against the Magic Circle firms or US firms, and that means the quality of work you get to do is really good.
Yeah, I would say the same, just like the culture and just the small intake. Especially because I'm in Bristol, we only have 4 people per year. So the year above, we have 3 trainees. So in total, we have 7 trainees at the moment, and we're all really close. And it's the same with the London trainees as well. Whenever I'm over there, we can just talk and chat, and it's fine because we all sort of know each other. But that wouldn't necessarily be the case in some of the other firms that take 100 trainees a year. Or is it 100 now?
There's one of them. Yeah, I can't remember which one it is that does that. It's Links or Clifford, I think, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
So to be honest, the guys watching probably follow the market more closely than we do in terms of this, so they might actually know. But yeah.
But that is a legitimate reason why.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. Just the collegiate feel and just having that sort of network of people that you can speak to. It's quite important, especially for people who are just coming out of uni, haven't worked very long. It really does make a difference.
Great. As Jack said, that's a question that often comes up in interviews and application forms. So having a clear reason for why you would choose RPC is definitely something that's very personal, but you need to work out for yourself and kind of get down. But good question.
That's a good one. It's a commercial awareness thing. How would you say current economic events have affected your particular seat or the work you interact with? This was a very, very popular one in my last seat, which was restructuring insolvency. You can see pretty quite a clear link between the economy going down the pan and any insolvency team being quite busy. Surprisingly, when I was there, it actually wasn't especially busy. So that particular area is likely to change a bit now, because things like retail insolvencies are starting to increase in number. You've got things like Jules considering a CVA. So I'd say that particular department within the firm is likely to see probably a little bit more activity. What form exactly of activity is a little bit unclear, but it's nonetheless it's likely to be busier, and there'll be more companies looking at seeking out advice on what to do if they're in financial difficulty. I would say within my current one, IP and tech, it's the main matters that I'm on are quite big and long running, and therefore recent events haven't had a huge impact. But one thing that tends to happen in the firm more generally is that when times are bad, the numbers of disputes actually increases. So that tends to be actually quite good from an RPC workload point of view, because we tend to get quite a few matters in. But yeah, that's me. I don't know about FR, if you've noticed anything.
I would say just one off the top of my head would be people who are suing their pension providers when they're, something happens to their investments. That's just something that people do, I think. And in the current climate, I haven't really been paying close attention, but I'm assuming that some investments are not doing that well, and that may lead to sort of just claims being issued against pension providers. But one thing to keep in mind is that the time frame for these things is usually quite long, so it might take a while for sort of all this stuff to actually reach our desks. Yeah, that's just one thing I would say.
Yeah, I think I haven't had any. Again, I'm instructed on things that have been going on for a while, so it takes time for them to come through. I think the only kind of sense of things that we've had coming through is that, as with any business, clients are a bit more cost conscious now, and some clients more so in particular, which means they expect more from their lawyers, or they may scrutinize the costs that we are passing on to them a bit more. Other things, I think I remember asking a question similar to this during my vacation scheme, which was right in the middle of COVID. And I was told, which is probably quite true for a lot of law firms across the city, that RPC and law firms tend to be structured so that they have teams that do well when the economy is doing well, but also teams like the restructuring insolvency team that can do well when the economy isn't doing so well. So actually law firms can kind of plan that out and kind of ride through any downturns quite well. But we're at the beginning of the current whatever this is, so we'll have to wait.
And I mean, you'll see like generally, in very general terms, things like disputes over commercial contracts and things will increase because various parties will run out of money or let other parties down due to the difficulty that they're in. There'll be all kinds of disputes over clauses and things in that. Our commercial banking litigation team will probably be relatively busy with a few things. I would be surprised if their work didn't increase in some way, but it's quite hard to judge exactly what form that will take, I would say. This is good. You go massage this one. What would you say was the determining factor of you guys getting your training contract? I would say I don't know for definite. It's one of the useful things to do. I'll pick up on a few things they said that were good. One of the things is to show an interest in the areas that RPC operates in. So it has a strong insurance heritage, for example. So, if you're interested in RPC, I would recommend, if your uni's got an FT subscription or something like that, then actually following any recent developments in that industry could be quite useful to you. I think having quite a clear idea of why you want to apply here is beneficial. And yeah, I don't know really. Just sort of, I think it's probably quite useful to just to have an understanding of the firm. But I think the reasons why people get in could vary between individuals. So
Yeah.
and also we get like rough feedback after interviews, but you don't get sort of like a granular explanation of what you did that was all good and what you did that was all bad. So it's quite difficult to say, I'm afraid.
It's an interesting question because I remember our back scheme, and we did ours online because it was COVID, sitting there thinking, oh, I think this person's definitely got it, this person's definitely got it, this person's definitely got it. Where does that fit? Where do I fit into that? And then actually I was completely wrong in terms of who I thought got what. So you never really know exactly, but I guess there are some things like Jack's touched on, knowing the business. Actually, people will see through if you don't generally want to train at RPC and actually are just applying absolutely everywhere and have only got through to the one interview at RPC, but would rather be somewhere else. So you do need to be really genuine in that sense. And I think that's because they know that you won't actually see through the whole 2 years of the training contract and then qualify if you aren't in it really. I think other things is probably determining factors are things like being kind of someone who uses initiative, someone who doesn't sit on things, and if something goes wrong, kind of trying to hide it, being someone who's happy to pick up the phone or talk to people, being the kind of person you might, if you guys are at uni, the kind of person who actually turns on your camera and asks a question rather than just sit there doing nothing all the time. It's those kind of things which will make you stand out during any kind of assessment center interview process or vaccine.
Yeah, and I would say just really sort of focusing on getting that commercial awareness just up there. You don't have to know everything, but just being able to, have a view on things that you hear or see. It doesn't have to be reading the news. You could also just look at insight articles from management consultancies. That's what I did. It was just easier than actually, reading something and developing my own view. Sometimes, just seeing how actual professionals in the industry are sort of assessing things and just seeing how that all fits together is really useful. And I think that was definitely a determining factor for me anyway.
I think one thing I would say, it's a follow on what we've just said, which is very slightly depressing, but I'm going to have to kind of say it, is that the whole process is fundamentally a bit of a numbers game. It's a bit mixed in with knowing how to do an application combined with just applying to enough firms that you kind of get an interview somewhere and find a way in. So I would say, just bear that in mind, that it's sort of useful to have a knowledge. It's obviously very useful to have a knowledge of the firm, but don't sort of lay all your eggs in one basket. Like, be prepared that you will have to build up a knowledge of a few different firms and the sectors that they operate in, and kind of build up an answer for a few of them. And that's probably the best approach to take. Although obviously is the best. So, keen to remind you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Jenny. We've got Ruth next, who says,
it's kind of the same one, do we think?
Similar, how did you set yourselves apart in your applications? I think the thing I would say in that, which we haven't covered, is you do need to be yourself in your applications. And as much as there are loads of forums out there now, or kind of guides on how to do things, or you might see things on social media about what you think you need to put down, you do need to put down things about yourself or your own thought process or what you're interested in. And I think for me, as someone who was not law and a career changer, being able to set out kind of my background rather than trying to fit into a traditional law background probably was something that made me look different and set myself apart from everyone, like other people who would put the same things down all the time. I don't know what you guys think on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that's not been said.
I would just say focus on a unique
Yeah,
part of yourself and just
yeah,
and
yeah.
just like sort of expand on that. And
I suppose also what's kind of useful is if, and again, this is going to be quite annoying because I think every firm probably says this, but I don't think RPC is looking for a sort of clone, a sort of LinkedIn clone applicant. Like I think if you just go into the interview process and just give very grey, very boring answers and don't sort of show any sort of sense of yourself, then that's not really what the firm's after. So I'd say sort of being sort of confident enough to, just be yourself in an interview situation is beneficial as well.
Yeah,
which I think is overlooked sometimes.
And kind of being able to apply that to the job you're applying for. I think you would have much better job, say, talking about a part-time job you might have had in a pub or working in a supermarket, if you can say that during that job you did something that really helped the business, more so than just listing that you've been president of the Law Society or Sports Society or other things without really putting that into context. So yeah, don't be afraid of thinking about things that you've done that might be different to others that actually are the reasons why you're applying or want to be a solicitor.
Cool. Right, well, you'll be good at this. Any advice for someone coming from an on-law background?
Yeah, okay. So I think one is definitely apply and don't hold yourself back or think you can't apply because you're non-law. I think we have around 50% of applicants are non-law, and across most training contract holders kind of across the country, let alone kind of city firms, it is around 50%. But you do need to understand the process and you do need to understand the job. So learn what the qualification route will be for when you're coming in and what that means. So if you're doing the SQE, what does that mean? And that's going to be hard at the moment because firms are doing different things whilst the SQE is embedded. I know that we're asking people to do a postgraduate diploma similar to the EDL before, and then doing the SQE. So there's kind of a 2-year process with that. I would also say get some voluntary or work experience if you can, so you can understand the job. So that could be things at uni, it could be things like volunteering for local citizens advice, just so that you really can show in your application that you understand what being a solicitor is or how the courts work a bit. You won't be able to replicate or just get into like a giant law firm and get some work experience there, but go in that you've got some understanding, that you've spent some time in getting to know the job, I found really, really helpful. Other than that, I think just all the same things we've said apply to if you're non-law. You need that commercial awareness. You need to have a reason for applying. You might get pushed a bit more than a law applicant on why you want to go into law and why you want to be. Everyone needs to be able to say why you want to be a solicitor rather than say a barrister or working in another area of law. And why do you want to be a commercial solicitor rather than say, I'm working in something like family law or humanitarian law. Those are all answers that you really need to have kind of a very tight but personal response for. And that's it. I don't know if you two have any non-law tips.
Yeah, well, I am one myself because I didn't do law at undergrad and I didn't have any like professional work experience before I started here. I would say it loops into something we were talking about earlier. Commercial awareness is quite a useful one from that point of view, and that's something that firms tend to ask about because they know that a lot of people from non-law backgrounds will apply and they won't know anything about the law. So I suppose starting from the top, be reassured that you won't sit down and interview and be asked, what do you think about this case? Or how does this legal principle work in practice or anything like that? but building up an understanding of the sectors the firm operates in and anything important happening, and building up an understanding of the legal industry in general, i.e. any trends, like any increased use of tech, anything in terms of where places are opening, any sort of particular teams that are doing well at the moment, stuff like that. Building up a knowledge of the industry is quite useful. And to be honest, that applies to law and non-law, because that's not part of a law degree. So yeah, I would say, to be honest, don't be too concerned about the fact that you don't know anything about the law itself. Just as Nick says, have an understanding of what the day-to-day involves, I suppose. So be it putting together emails to clients, putting together letters to the other side, researching points, a lot of which you'll probably have had some experience in during your degree, so you can kind of talk about that as something transferable. Yeah. Does that help? I don't know if it's just a stream of consciousness.
But good question, and something definitely to tackle at events like this, and to make sure you feel really confident being able to apply. Definitely don't hold back because you're non-law. Just apply and get stuck in. What have we got next from Ruth?
How is the trainee life in a non-work related sense, social events, etc.? It's pretty good. They've got there's like quite a few societies within the firms. I don't actually know to what extent trainees get involved with this, but I know there's some. I'm not a huge sports person myself, but I'm aware that there are teams in the firm. There's a football team going. I'm pretty sure there's a badminton team. There's a badminton club of some sort. There's other PFR people do that. So there's that sort of things. It's quite common for like us as trainees to meet each other informally after work. Hi, Estelle.
Bye.
Hey.
What else is there? I must be missing stuff out here.
Hi Estelle, we're just talking about non-work related things and social things. So Jack was talking about, there's lots of sports clubs, football, netball, things like that. There's other kind of non-sports clubs. There's a book club. Someone's trying to set up a film club. There's lots of things we do as trainees, kind of between the year groups, but also ourselves and within our teams. There's quite regular kind of events, such as like, Christmas parties and office things like that. The London office and the Bristol office have just been refurbished, so there's quite a few social events put on for people to come into the office and kind of meet each other, which is nice because that's open to everyone across the firm. So you get to meet people from different teams and the people who don't do legal work with you on a day-to-day basis too. I'm just trying to think of any others.
I'm also worried we're going to run out of time as well, because we've got 15 minutes.
The only other thing I think that would fit in here is there are also a lot of kind of community groups for things like diversity and inclusion, which are actually being wrapped up now as ESG, so environmental, social and governance issues, and they cover things such as gender, ethnicity, social mobility, and even from the get-go as first seat trainees, we've been encouraged to get involved with them, put in our ideas and how we want to help out those groups, and you get to meet people all across the business and different levels. There's lots of partners who get involved with those groups, which has been really great.
What is your work-life balance like, and what made you choose RPC? We've kind of done the why we chose RPC thing earlier, so just in the interest of time. Work-life balance is pretty good in comparison to a large number of other firms. It varies, but I think the average leave time across the firm is, what is it now? 7:05, I think, when I last checked. Which in comparison to a lot of other places is pretty good. There's times when work-life balance deteriorates a bit, but there's quite a few other times where if you haven't got much on, then you can be out the door by 6. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, absolutely, but yeah, on the whole, pretty good.
Yeah, it's I think it's slightly better in Bristol. People
Slam. Yeah, no, exactly.
I think a lot of people are usually out at 5:30. So it was quite strange for me my first few days here when everyone would just get up and leave and I'd still be working. But yeah, I think for trainees, it varies. I think the latest finish I've had is maybe 9, 10, but it doesn't happen a lot, I think. So yeah, Bristol, I would say it's better work-life balance. Like if I wanted to, I could leave at 5 every day, like and get my work done.
Right.
Obviously there's more stuff to do. You can just ask for more work if you don't have enough.
Sorry guys, just to flag quickly, we've got Estelle here. So if you've got any questions to do with the application process, she is the person to ask, much more than us, basically. So,
I can actually see a question in the chat, which I might be able to answer. So what is the first year that non-law undergraduates can apply? So non-law undergraduates should apply in their final year.
Thanks, Estelle.
that is a lot more efficient than me hesitating.
Got the answers.
I should just add on the work-life balance point that because we're in a law firm, it's quite different from how regular jobs work in the sense of how we get things done. Because obviously lawyers record time and that's how we bill our clients. So it's not sort of like you get down and you work until from 9 to 5 and then you leave. It just depends on the team you're in and just the level of work that you're getting. So if you're in an M&A team and like there's no M&A going on, then you might be leaving at 4 every day. I don't know if in this firm, but in other firms that my friends have worked in, like if there's nothing going on, they can leave. And I think it's kind of the same here, but less extreme.
Yeah, that's actually, in some ways, that's a function of transactional versus contentious. Contentious, just hours-wise, tends to be a bit more consistent. So there'll be, in the run-up to deadlines, it can sort of get slightly intense, but it's broadly a little bit more consistent. You tend to work with longer deadlines, whereas transactional goes from finishing at like 5 p.m. to finishing at about 3 a.m. at the drop of a hat. So that's just something to bear in mind in terms of how RPC compares to other firms. It's dependent in some ways on the work that it does.
Yeah, and I think the thing that goes with that, and Mars touched on this earlier, is that you get work from a lot of different people. So there's no one, even your supervisors, who has complete oversight of what you are doing, which means that actually one of the things that you need to be good at, and this is something you can demonstrate in applications, is managing your own time, because that's part of the job. And in a way that can dictate when you leave, because if you take on too much work, then you'll be here forever. But actually, it's down to you to make sure you have those conversations with people about, we call it capacity, but how much time you have to do things and when you can realistically get things done. Estelle, I know you had your slide, which has dates and things on it. Do you want to go through that and any of the general application things that are coming up?
Yes, so I should be able to share it, but I'm not entirely sure. Oh, brilliant.
I see it now. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, so we've got some key dates up on the screen for our summer scheme, first year workshop, and our Bristol and London training contract. So for anybody who wants to kind of note those down, I think that'd be quite useful.
And are these open to everyone? We've got one.
So we can go through. So the London Insight event, the deadline is actually today. Actually, no, it's tomorrow. So you can make your application this evening, but obviously that one is kind of almost up now. But I would say for the summer scheme and the Bristol and London training contracts, you're able to apply, again, like I said, if you're in final year of a non-law degree or penultimate or final year of a law degree. And then we've also got the first year workshop, which is open to first year students.
Great. And I'm just asking you questions now.
No, go ahead.
Do those include application forms with questions that people need to answer, a bit like a training contract application?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of different routes. So the summer scheme is actually a direct route to the London training contract if you are successful. And then we also hold the London training contract direct assessment day as well, as we're kind of aware that not everybody can attend a summer scheme. And then separately to that, we also have the Bristol assessment day. We don't hold any kind of summer schemes or any type of vacation scheme for Bristol. That would be just the direct application form. And so, yeah, for all of those, you have to complete an online application form. And if you're successful, you will get invited to a Watson Glaser psychometric test. Following on from that, you'll be invited to an assessment day on the date shown, and then you'll go ahead into interview. The summer scheme, you'll obviously be accepted onto a summer scheme. That's a 2-week program with us. We hold 2 summer schemes across the summer. Each of those are 2 weeks long. And following on from that, you do have an interview at the end of that as well. And as I say, you will be eligible to join us on the training contract as well from a summer scheme.
Thank you.
And the VAC scheme is really, really good as well. Highly recommend it. You do actually get to do some proper, some kind of real life work, which is good. I don't think the case at every firm. I'm going back to earlier question because I got in there with no prior legal experience whatsoever. It's actually a pretty good way of sort of confirming that it is the kind of thing that you want to do, I suppose, because you've necessarily had a bit less experience beforehand.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. We are kind of aware that it's difficult to get legal work experience. So any kind of examples that you can use in your application form, any work experience that you've got, definitely put it on there. We really like to see those transferable skills, and I definitely recommend any kind of experience you've got. It doesn't have to be a legal work experience.
We've got a couple of questions, but it just occurred to me. Estelle, could you talk through for everyone what happens after they get the training contract now in terms of doing the SQE?
Yes, so in terms of the SQE, we are following that route from 2024 onwards. And so you have to take SQE 1 and 2 in order to join us on the training contract. We are kind of aware that it's a transition period at the moment. So if anybody has kind of different requirements, we are talking to people on a case-by-case basis. But broadly, that is what we're going forward with at the moment.
Great.
I feel really old now. I don't understand any of the process. It's all changed since I did it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a few minutes. We've got a good question here from Kirsten. Any tips for the Watson Glaser? So I guess that's for any of us, maybe.
Practice. To be honest, I would say to be pretty honest, found them a bit weird when I first did them. Once you've done a few of them, I think it just starts to make a little bit more sense in your head. It's not that you can't do it. It's more just the format's just a bit unfamiliar compared to things that you've done previously. At least that's what I found. So yeah, I would say see if you can get some practice on them.
Yeah, you do get a practice one as well before you have to do the real one. So there is that option.
For most they will normally have like some sort of resource that you can use. A lot of like career services have practice things. I'm pretty sure mine did.
Yeah.
And I think you can find them online as well.
Yeah.
There's, from what I remember, there's 5 different types of questions, so you really need to learn how to answer each different type. And I can't remember the name of it, but there is a Watson Glaser book on Amazon, which is great if you just look for it, which explains how each of the different question types worked, and I found that really useful. But the main thing is just practice every single day when you're leading up to one, because the core of the questions is the same, whichever law firm and whichever platform they're using for it.
We've got another question there as well, which is, are the VAC scheme applications rolling?
Yeah, so we recruit up until the application deadline, but We do obviously recommend that you kind of get your application in as soon as possible. But yeah, you can see the deadline's not for a little while now, so you do still have time. But we would recommend not leaving it till kind of the last minute, just to kind of leave any way for any tech issues or any problems that might arise. So yeah, definitely get the application as soon as you can.
We've got one from Sharon, which I think I can answer, but I will confirm. If one gets on the vacation scheme, would you need to submit another application for the trainee contract? My instinctive response, if you've kept it the same as when I did it, is no. There is an exit interview at the end of the vacation scheme, and you can be made an offer from there. So you don't have to do a second round of hideous application form fulfilling, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. So we've got time probably for a couple more questions. And I think we've just got one we haven't covered from Leanne, which was for GE LLB students, can we apply after finishing 1 year since the whole course is only 2 years? Do you know that, Estelle?
I'm not actually too sure. I can go and check that for you. So law students can apply in their penultimate and final year. So that'll be something I'll double check for you. Yeah, I can. If I give you our email, you could email that question in, and we'll get back to you on that one. So let me just type our email into the box here.
Great. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes. Any last burning questions from anyone?
I think there's a question from someone who's a qualified lawyer in Nigeria. I think for that, you wouldn't want to be applying for a training contract. I think UK firms have or can just employ you, depending on sort of what practice area you're in. Or you could do the SQE. Yeah.
I would say that's a question for that email, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
That's a complex one.
Yeah.
Again, I would recommend just double checking that with us. But I think, yeah, you're probably right there. And that's maybe something to check on the SRA website as well. But definitely get in contact with us, and we'll be able to kind of give you a better answer to that. I think I'm also just going to pop into the chat here our virtual work experience program, just a link to that people might find useful. So I'll pop that into the chat as well.
Yeah, that's really good. And a lot of firms have those now. A good question I was asked at an event like this before, though, is we don't track who does the virtual work experience, and you won't be penalised if you start it and don't finish it. I know some people get a bit worried and feel like they have to do a virtual work experience program for every single firm that they're applying for. That's not the case. These are just things that law firms have put together because they know it's hard to get all of the things that we've been talking about in terms of commercial awareness and how that applies to law firms. So just have a go, do as much as you can, and you can genuinely put it on your application forms too and talk about it in interviews.
Yeah.
Again, not a thing when I applied.
No,
massively outdated now.
Emerged in COVID and have stayed.
Cool. So we've got a couple more minutes. If anyone's got anything last minute that my extremely long and rambling answers failed to address, or any further questions.
Okay, well,
I don't know if we can end this, actually, to be fair.
I'm not sure. We're not sure what happens, but we'll hang on for a minute until 3 o'clock or just past it. If anyone has any other burning questions, get them in or send them into Estelle at strikinglyreal@rpc.co.uk. Thank you, everyone. I think we've had some really good questions. You can see because we've actually filled the time. And good luck with everyone in your applications.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.